Hey guys, wanted to tell you real quick about our podcast host and sponsor, Anchor.fm. If you're thinking about starting your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They'll distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go out to Anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor.fm. Now back to the show. The Cannabis Heals Me Podcast, episode 123.
You're listening to the Cannabis Heals Me podcast, where we explore the real stories of real people who have discovered the profound healing properties of the cannabis plant in their own lives. Find more at cannabishealsme.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cannabis Heals Me podcast. This is your host, Rachel Kennerly, coming to you, as always, from the Storybook and Studios. Thank you so much for joining me again. I know you guys have a lot of things that you can listen to, so the fact that you choose to come and spend, 30, 45 minutes, an hour with me each week, I really appreciate it, especially since so many of you are not driving as much as you used to. So you coming here to listen to this is much more of a concerted effort, and I really appreciate you doing that for me. If you haven't done so already, please go out and subscribe to the podcast. That way you will never miss an episode. And while you're out there subscribing, I would sincerely appreciate it if you would give us a rating or review. And like I say every week, the reason I ask you to do that is because the algorithm loves it. It loves when you give us a 5-star rating. It loves when you take the time to actually write a review. And you know what? So do I. It is very confirming to me on a human basic level to know that somebody cares enough about the content we're putting out to actually go out and spend 2 or 3 minutes writing a review. Our guest today is Deirdra Martinez. She is a holistic health professional and founder of the Uplift movement. She is going to share with us her personal story of how she found cannabis as medicine and how she was able to incorporate that with yoga and meditation to overcome some health issues that she was facing. Deirdra, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So you had actually sent me an email and said, hey, I'd love to come on the show and tell you about my medical cannabis experience. And then you also mentioned that you had written a book. So how did you come to find cannabis as medicine?
So thank you for having me. And I love what you're doing with the podcast. I mean, anything that we can do to really bring awareness to people in regards to shining light on what cannabis, the potential benefits of cannabis.
Yes.
Hopefully changing the way that things are right now, because in a lot of places, it's not, people don't have access.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stigma. So hopefully, it's like, I think both of us are inspired to help uplift that and to change that. So thank you for what you're doing too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so basically, like, my story, and this is why I wrote the book, was to share it, of just how it is kind of not what you would expect, because I've had all kinds of different experiences with drugs, alcohol, stress, and all over the place. And where cannabis was seen as like a gateway drug, it was my gateway, like, out of all of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so what happened is that I've always had a lot of anxiety. And growing up, I struggled with my weight. I had an eating disorder. I didn't, realize it. You don't realize it when you have it. You just eat a lot. So I grew up overweight, obese, and struggled with my weight for a long time. And when I got older, that continued, as well as back pain. I had chronic back pain right between my shoulder blades. And I had a drinking problem too. I drank a lot of alcohol. So what happened was that because of the back problem, I ended up going to a doctor, and they were, I've gone to so many doctors, acupuncturists, chiropractors, massage therapists. Nobody could figure it out until they were pretty much going to put me on back surgery.
Oh, goodness.
And I know. And I was like, oh my God, that just sounds so crazy. That sounds so horrible.
So did they know what was the cause of the pain? But they're just like, oh, let's just go in blind and totally do back surgery on you.
it was about a year of trying so many different things, and they couldn't really figure it out. And so that's why it's like, well, we can try back surgery, but wait, before we do that, let's send you to a psychiatrist. And I wasn't sure if that was because, back surgery was going to be something that would obviously probably, affect you mentally as well too. So they wanted to do that, or I was just like, okay, that makes sense. So I went to the psychiatrist, and that's the first time where, like, he said, he said to me, he's like, I told him about my back pain. I told him about, everything that was going on in my life and all the other substance abuse issues that I had like with food and alcohol and all these things. He's like, well, I think it's in your head. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you think I'm making this up? Like, I'm faking this? So I was actually pretty upset. And he said, no, it's anxiety. And I was already 30 years old at that time. And I had never heard of what anxiety was. Never.
Really?
Never. And so he started to educate me on what anxiety was, stress, and how that affects your body, and how that it can affect your muscle spasms in your back. And then I just realized, like, wow, I had been self-medicating myself with food and alcohol and, just anything I could get my hands on to really cope with that anxiety. So he decided to put me on Prozac, which I thought was weird because I had heard, that like Prozac was for depression, I was like, but I'm not depressed. And he said, well, it can also help with anxiety. So, he's a doctor, and I think that's what we all do, right? Is like, we trust the doctor. A pill seems like a nice, good, quick fix. Just take the freaking back pain away. Like, make it so I started on the Prozac regimen, and it was like, at first, amazing. Like, the back pain was gone. I was calm. Like, everything was cool. I had never felt that kind of calm before in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But after about 2 years, maybe about a year or so, I started to feel like numb, like a zombie. Like, I had no emotion whatsoever. And my eating disorder kicked up. I started just like overeating to kind of like feel something. And, one thing that I had left out, which is a part of the story, is because I had that alcohol disorder also, I joined AA. I had joined AA. And it was just something I knew to do. My dad was in the program. He was, many years sober. So when I was in my binge drinking phase, I couldn't stop. I just thought, well, like, I'll go to AA and that'll fix me. So, so when I was on Prozac and I became depressed, I was working with a woman who had cancer, and I opened up to her everything that I was feeling. I was like, I have this depression now. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm scared to get off the drugs because I don't want the back pain to come back. And she was like, Deirdra, you got to go to these cannabis dispensaries. Because she was using it for her cancer. She's like, they have weed for pain, for depression, for anxiety, everything. And she's an older woman, probably in her early 60s. And we both worked at the YMCA at the time. I was like, what? You tell me to go smoke weed?
Were you offended when she recommended that?
No. I mean, so I had been a party girl for a long time, alcohol, drugs, everything, weed, but it was always recreational. And so I was just like thinking about how, well, that would change my sobriety. Like, I can't do that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was already probably about 4 years sober. I had a sponsor. I had like all of that, and it was scary because I felt like, well, if I started smoking weed, I would lose my sobriety. So I called my sponsor, and I said, I've got this dilemma. I don't want to drink again, but I'm on this Prozac, which makes me feel like shit. And when I had talked to my doctor, he wanted to give me more drugs, which I just don't think is okay. And I heard weed could be helpful, and I'm really thinking about trying it. And, she just let me kind of figure it out. She didn't make me feel bad about it. She didn't tell me what to do. She was just like, whatever you decide, I will love you and support you. And so, I rationalized it in my head.
Well, that's hard work to go from drinking a lot and then be sober for 4 years. So it's like, you don't want to throw that away on
It's a lot
something
of
that,
work.
yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, my life had gotten better in ways. I had worked on myself, and it was the first time too I had done like spiritual work, which I had never done before. So there was a lot of benefits, and I was really scared of losing all of that. And we have this stigma of, oh, again, the cannabis is a gateway drug. If I start smoking weed, I'll start drinking, I'll start doing cocaine, I'll start doing meth, I'll end up under some alley, homeless, selling my body, just like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then too, like, if I tell my dad, what is he going to think about me? He's going to be disappointed because he's had so many years of sobriety. And I felt like, what if this makes us disconnected? So I was kind of scared about that too. But I just rationalized with myself. I said, why is Prozac okay? And that's totally making me feel like crap. And they want to give me more drugs. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And this cannabis is legal. Like, it was medically legal at the time. This was back in like 2006. I don't know, way back when. Early stages. Yeah, like maybe 10 years ago. So yeah, like 2010, 2011. And so I decided to do it and try it. And I remember at the time thinking like, all those emotions come up about guilt, shame, am I doing the right thing? But I noticed that I felt better. Like, I didn't feel like a zombie like I had done on the Prozac. I didn't feel the anxiety. It was like I felt fine. I felt good. When you smoke cannabis and you're taking it therapeutically, you can still function. You could do things.
Yeah, you're not getting wasted.
You're not getting wasted, right? But there was no guidance back then on how to use it. And that was the problem too, was that I found myself kind of relying on it all the time, using it every day. I think it was a good alternative for the Prozac because, again, I wasn't feeling like a zombie, but I was really relying heavily on it. I didn't really know how to use it therapeutically. So that became a journey, like, of over several years of basically integrating fitness and health and changing my lifestyle. I became a fitness instructor because, again, I had always battled with my weight for so long. So I thought, well, if I become a fitness instructor, I'll learn everything there is and I'll just get healthy. And so I started teaching like Zumba, and I got really injured with Zumba, and that led me to yoga, which I never thought I would do because I never thought I could sit still and breathe. that alone would bring me anxiety. But yoga was amazing. Like, that's what totally all of a sudden made sense to me with understanding the mind body connection. And then when I would consume cannabis and do yoga together, if you've tried that, it's just especially like an edible or something like that's a very body high experience. Basically you're taking your body into a relaxation state when you're breathing deeply, when you're resting or you're sitting, when you're doing that therapeutic yoga. And so all of a sudden, like, my health and well-being was just increasing. Like, my head wasn't whirling as much. Like, things were just starting to be a lot more conscious and intentional, and I had more energy and vitality. So things just started to really like get better in that sense. And also because I was going in that route of like holistic medicine, I remember I had always battled with my weight and eating. I found a program that was called the Psychology of Eating. And it was really focused on not just like what we eat, because I was a trainer. I already knew what to eat.
Yeah.
Like, but I cheated on every diet. You know?
Yeah.
I binged all the time. It was like why we're eating and how we're eating, and really changing our relationship and healing the relationship with our body and with food. And so it was like this evolution of all these different elements that I was learning as I was consuming cannabis. And the more that I integrated everything, the less that I needed cannabis, and the more it became really therapeutic. And so that's kind of what led me to writing the book. Was I developed this model basically of integrating cannabis into a healthy lifestyle that incorporates mindful eating, nutrition, fitness, and stress management through meditation, yoga, and then cannabis. And so, all the things, like, it's just amazing because like none of that stuff. I mean, I did start drinking again. Okay. I'm going to just be open about that. Uh, And what I've learned is like, it's not the alcohol that's the problem. It's not the cannabis that's the problem. I had a problem. Like, pain was the issue that I wasn't processing. And so now that like that pain has been resolved, I know how to how to cope in a healthy way. I know how to take care of myself. I know how to meditate. I know how to do all these things. I don't abuse anything like that anymore. You so all those issues that I had before, like I don't have an eating disorder anymore. I don't have pain anymore. Don't struggle in my relationships with men like I used to. I'm married now. I'm about to have a baby. Like all these things.
How exciting.
Yeah. So it's just like life is awesome. And it was all thanks to being able to use cannabis and alternatively, like as an alternative source to healing, basically. Yeah.
Now, when you got off of Prozac, did you go cold turkey? Did you talk to your psychiatrist and say, this is what I'm going to do?
I went cold turkey because I wasn't going to tell him, I'm thinking about smoking pot.
Yeah.
I have Kaiser insurance. They're not very open-minded.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough because I really kept it. It was hard to talk about it with anybody. And that's why I felt like there was really no guidance. And it took me years to like figure it out. And that's the thing that like, I like to stress with people is there's a certain way of using it. And if you're not using it, consciously like that with like the actual lifestyle elements, it is recreational, or you're not getting the full benefit. Because basically I talk about some of this in the book, but you've got your endocannabinoid system, which helps with homeostasis in the body. And stress can create that imbalance in the homeostasis system. So you could be smoking all the weed you want to, but if you're not doing anything to manage your stress, then you're going to continuously be like limping on your endocannabinoid system. It's still going to be not as effective as it could be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Same thing with nutrition. If we're overeating or we're not eating the right foods, that stresses your endocannabinoid system. Same thing with inactivity, so you really want to integrate all those different elements to really get the most out of enhancing the therapeutic benefits.
I've talked to several people and they've talked about how cannabis actually makes them more aware of, like more aware of doing things to help themselves be more healthy. Did you find that was the case for you as well?
I really felt it more in yoga practice more than anything, because again, I think it's that you drop into your body so much more, especially with like an edible, or I don't like to just categorize so much, but like those indica strains tend to feel a little bit more of a body sensation in general. So I felt like like anytime I'm up here too much in my head, whirlings of the mind, they like to say in yoga, it's hard to be conscious, right? It's hard to be in the moment because the narrative, the story is this is running high. But when you drop into the body, at least for me, that really grounds me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm using cannabis and I'm holding a pose for a while, like I'm in it,
Mm-hmm.
like I can feel every single sensation. I can feel like I can see my thoughts. I can, everything is very much alive. And so that consciousness really draws there for me with yoga and cannabis.
Well, what is the name of the book?
It's called A Higher State of Health. And basically what I share is my journey, what I just shared.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have a big problem in, and I feel in our society more than anything, is stress. And most of us are unaware of the stress that we're experiencing. It's become normalized.
Mm-hmm.
We you can see it by, people's pain that they're experiencing, the rate of opioid addiction,
Mm-hmm.
of obesity rates, the rate of divorce. I mean, all these different things that are affecting people's quality of lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's all stress related.
Yeah.
Addiction also.
Yes.
It's all stress related. And women in general are more prone to stress than men. And so the book is really tailored towards women specifically, and addressing these chronic stress issues, and how to use cannabis. And I, talk about which different meditation practices to use, which which nutrition practices to use, which fitness I recommend,
Mm-hmm.
and what cannabis I would recommend for things like insomnia or addiction,
Mm-hmm.
things that are related to chronic stress.
Yeah. Well, is the book available on Amazon? Do you have a website? If folks are interested in checking it out, where can they do that?
Yeah, it is on Amazon. It's on Kindle as well as paperback. And then they can go to my website, deirdremartinez.com. And also there's a link on there. And on my website too, they can find, I've got downloads to meditations on there. You can get a free class pass I teach Zumba.
Okay. So you've recovered from your Zumba injury then, I guess.
Yes. Everything I'm pain free.
That's awesome.
Except that I'm growing a baby in my belly and I'm 40. So,
That's exciting.
Things my body is experiencing some changes there.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, yeah, I'm pain free. I mean, stress is very manageable these days. And I just don't have those same sort of health issues that I did.
Mm-hmm.
My weight's also managed. I don't have to count my calories anymore like I used to obsess about it. And it's crazy too when you're having a baby. You're gonna gain weight, and I'm just kind of like, okay,
yeah. Now you mentioned that you were pretty nervous about your dad finding out that you were going to use cannabis. Did you tell him immediately, or did you kind of
took me a while.
closet use it for a while?
Yeah, I basically had told him, I believe first that I stopped going to AA.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell him that I was using cannabis yet.
Yeah.
So that probably took me, I actually can't even remember. I don't know if I'm sure I told him eventually. And it was weird too. So I work in the cannabis industry. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something also that I share in the book too, is like I share insights from being in the trenches of working in the cannabis industry. So back in 2018, when it got legalized in California, I had the opportunity to work in cannabis sales, selling to dispensaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a freak out moment again too. Like, is my dad gonna, I'm really close with my dad. We have a great relationship and I love him. But again, is he gonna flip out?
Mm-hmm.
Is he gonna be worried about me? Is he gonna judge me? Or, is he gonna be, upset because other people are gonna judge me? And just all of that kind of stuff. Right. And I do remember the day that I told him, because it was right after, it was like New Year's Eve, when I signed my agreement letter for the job, that I called him like that morning. I'm like, well, Dad, I'm going to start a new job. He's like, great, Mija. Congratulations. Well,
What do
it's
you?
and he's got like 30 years sober, like no drugs, no alcohol, nothing. And when I told him, he was like, that's great. It's about time they legalize it,
Well,
because
good for him.
yeah, he was a hippie back in the day, he was always for like people's and individual rights. Like
Mhm.
nobody should tell you what to put in your body. And so he was like, it's about time they legalize it. And I was like, wow, thanks, Dad.
You were worried for nothing.
I was worried for nothing, and he's proud of me. He really thinks it's cool that I'm working in the industry that is really paving a new path. So yeah, it's kind of really strengthened our relationship.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And it is kind of scary to tell your folks what you're, something that kind of has a little bit of stigma to it, to tell them that you're involved in that. So
Yeah, and again, like there's just all these negative associations with it, like the gateway drug, or
yeah,
yeah, and it's just like I just say, look, I'm a smoker, I'm not under an alley, like, and those people too, I mean, one of my favorite teachers, who really studies addiction and shares a lot about it, is Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
what's his name again?
Dr. Gabor Mate,
Hmm.
and his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And it talks about how, the problem is how we treat addicts and how we treat
Hmm.
users, people that have substance abuse disorders,
Yeah.
how we treat them.
Hmm.
And that creates more of the same problem. They
Yeah.
just keep on going back and reverting back to the same problem. And what people need more than anything is love and
Yes.
and that's also too what I find fascinating about cannabis, when you look at it from a scientific standpoint, is it activates that bliss molecule.
Hmm.
um, Again, it can be something that is, people become dependent on, and that's why I think it's so important, why you have to incorporate a healthy lifestyle, mindfulness, and all those different practices, is to learn how to use it again therapeutically,
Hmm.
because we need it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how you would use exercise. You use it there, it's therapeutically.
Yeah. And our body is built for it. So
Yeah.
when you told your friends, I mean, obviously they're probably seeing these changes in you, like physically and mentally. Did they have to ask you what it was, or had you already kind of told them?
My close friends already knew,
Mhm.
um, because yeah, my close friends pretty knew. I didn't start becoming open about how cannabis was part of it until it was legalized, and
Yeah.
even still, um, I it took me a while, because I felt like I had already like a pretty nice good following, just in from teaching Zumba classes and fitness, and in LA, Beverly Hills, and all those areas. So people had already associated with me as like this fitness instructor and like
Hmm.
this health person. And I was concerned and afraid of, again, the stigma. Like, what are they going to think of me, that I'm going to start working for this cannabis company?
Hmm.
And it was tough to really be open about it, like on social media at first, or just share my story. But I do have the story, and I have to own that story, because it is a story that, like, hey, it can help other people too. You don't have to be a slave to pills.
Hmm.
If they work for you and you're okay with it, hey, you can keep doing what you're doing. I'm not telling you how to use your body, but if you're not okay with it and you're looking for another solution, there's other ways, and I did it, and I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, it seems ironic to me that cannabis, at least medical, has been legal in California for decades now,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
still that stigma around it. You're still afraid to let people know. So, if it's that bad in California still, imagine
right.
what it's
I
like
know.
around the rest of the country.
I know. So I try to like, I try to make it fun. Like
Mhm.
that's why I love edibles. Like I'll share like recipes on how to make fun edibles. Or when I would work events with my company, I had this weed costume I'd always wear, like a weed onesie, and I'd
Uh-huh.
hoop, just like kind of things to make it um like fun. So it's not like a big deal, like, oh my God, weed. Well,
Yeah.
it's such a bad, it's like, no, it's fine, it's fun.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned social media. Where can folks follow you if they're interested in keeping tabs on you?
They can follow me on at the Uplift Movement. That's my Instagram handle. And then also I have Deirdra Martinez on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. Well, I will put links to those pages as well as to your website and to the book on the show notes for today's episode. Is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone?
Yeah, I mean, basically, this is a journey. This is a journey. And you're not alone. Nobody's alone. We're all, it sounds kind of like cliche. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
But, but we really are, people that are open to exploring alternative health and looking to do things more holistically. That's not always what you're going to find on TV. It's not always what you're going to hear on the radio. It's not mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's always talking about it. It's it might feel like you're alone sometimes. It might feel hard. So just know that like you have support, and you don't have to do it alone. And like I said, I did it. I felt like I had to discover this therapeutic method. It took me years,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt alone. It doesn't have to take you that much time. We can fast track that. So, if you're looking for a little bit of support, someone to talk to, just reach out to me.
That's great. Well, I have found that the cannabis community is very open, very welcoming, and so supportive. So I'll just echo what you said. Yes, you don't have to go through this alone. There will be somebody that will be happy to talk with you and offer you advice or just hold your hand as you go through this process.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Deirdra. And I hope everybody will go out and follow you and make sure you pick up the book. I think it sounds like a really good whole life approach to better health.
Yeah, definitely. All kinds of good tips and tools on there.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Deirdra.
Thank you.
Show notes for today's episode can be found out at cannabishealsme.com/123. Thank you so much for listening. You guys have a great week, and we will be back here next time. Hit the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode of the Cannabis Heals Me podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or whatever podcast app you're using. Do you have a suggestion for a guest on Cannabis Heals Me? Send an email to podcast@cannabishealsme.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please do not take any information from Cannabis Heals Me or its guests as medical advice. Contact your licensed physician before taking cannabis or using it for medical treatments.